How are you?
I'm great, Barbara. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I really appreciate you taking time out to share a What If Christ moment. It's very exciting. And, I saw a post that you had done, and I'm not trying to limit you to that, but I did see a post that you had done, and that was one of those What If Christ moments. And I love for people to have an opportunity because there's so much madness happening in the world today. So just to have an opportunity to see that Christ is in the midst of all of it. Because sometimes we can get caught up in the busyness and we miss it. And it's really easy for us to see what's going wrong, but sometimes we have to dig a little deeper to see what's right.
hmm
So I'd love for you, first of all, to tell us, who is Ted? Introduce yourself to us.
Sure. Well, my name is Ted Clouser. I grew up on a dairy farm in central Pennsylvania where all of my family still lives. They are all walking distance from each other. And I grew up on that dairy farm, was taught work ethic, was taught how to be a good person, a little bit of Jesus. It wasn't deeply rooted in everything we did, but I would attribute a lot of my success in life to my granny, who I am fully convinced prayed for my future every single day. At age 18, I moved to Little Rock, Arkansas. I am now a converted Arkansan after being here now for more than half my life.
Right.
I met my beautiful wife, Stephanie, almost 22 years ago. And we have two children. One is Alexis. She is a junior at the University of Alabama. And I have a son who is a junior at Baptist Prep High School in Little Rock.
Wow, that's wonderful. This was not one of the questions, but just hearing what you said, what brought you from Pennsylvania to Arkansas?
It's a great question. I did not travel much growing up on a farm. I knew I wanted to run from the farm. So I had a friend that lived here, still a good friend to this day, named Patrick, and picked up and just moved just because what did I have to lose? So the story is actually a little bit more interesting. I had $400 in my wallet and a car and a credit card, and actually paid first 2 months of my rent on that credit card. And really, it's part of my story when I look at how God maneuvered me to get here in Little Rock. That was just a little piece of the story.
Mhm. Wow, that's amazing. And we're really glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
And as I mentioned, we'll be talking about what if Christ moments. So if we're going to be talking about some what if Christ moments, one of the things I'd love for you to share is your testimony. Like, when did you meet Jesus?
Yeah, well, so I grew up, as I said earlier, as a teen. I had the opportunity to go to church. We went on Sundays. I really didn't have a personal relationship with Christ. I just understood the teachings. I had the core values. My granny was a believer, so I understood that there was something more than what I was getting. When I went as a teenager and started going to some youth events, I recognized that I really didn't grasp the entire picture. But I did have a good foundation. So it really wasn't until I moved to Arkansas. I started attending Fellowship North in 1996. And ultimately really began to understand more about having a personal relationship with Jesus. When I met Stephanie in 1998, it was pretty quick. We met in February, we're married by November. And she was really instrumental in helping me understand that I had a lot of the pieces, but I really had never taken a public statement, and I never really began the process of inviting Jesus into my heart. So she helped me maneuver through that. I always use January 3rd, 1999 as my date because that was the date I was baptized at church, and it was my public affirmation. And so it was also the time where I just said, okay, officially, this is what I'm going to declare. I accepted Jesus into my heart.
That's fantastic. So tell me, how did because you talked about knowing Jesus, but not necessarily having a personal relationship with Jesus. So how did your life change when you grasped that personal relationship with Jesus?
Well, I started to have hope. I started to recognize that the purpose was much greater than I ever understood. And we all know that Satan is strong, right? So as soon as I began that journey, it didn't make it easy.
Right.
It just made it rewarding because I recognized where we're at is temporary. This is our temporary home.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I talk often over the course of the past 20 plus years, I've had many opportunities to really share with people. And the best thing that I can come back to is without Jesus, you're really hopeless.
Right.
And so if this is our final destination, it's kind of scary, especially given all that's going on in our world right now. So having that relationship helps me understand that I have hope.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And you're absolutely right, because without Jesus, it is hopeless.
Hmm.
So, do you have a favorite scripture?
I do. Actually, wear it on my arm. Proverbs 3:5-6.
Okay.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've had the privilege of wearing it on my arm for probably 2 or 3 years. And it really has served me well in my current season of life. There have been some challenges, some transitions, some unknowns. And I've really started taking things one day at a time
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that God has a future plan for me, and I can have dreams and aspirations and goals, but I need to go where he wants me to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I would imagine for you then, because my next question would have been, how does that manifest itself in your life, and how do you live that out? But you just answered that every day you're walking.
Yeah, again, every day it's I really started taking that mindset that I'm going to go win the day.
Mm,
Every single day, I'm gonna be victorious as best I can over that day. I'm not going to focus on yesterday. I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. It helps me to try to be where my feet are. Of course, we all fall short. We
mhm.
fail. I have failures, but if I just focus on it one day at a time, I'll wake up tomorrow and it's a new day.
That's great. I really like that statement, that you get up every morning and you're going to win the day.
That's right.
I
Win the day.
really like that statement. That's great. So we're talking, about what if Christ moments. So, as I said, when I think about those what if Christ moments, it's those times when things just line up,
Mm.
and it was nothing that you did, but they
Mhm.
just line up. Are those times when you just do the right thing because it's the right thing to do?
Yeah.
Or even those times when you can see that God's will is being done on earth as it is in heaven. So I'd love for you to share a what if Christ moment with us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I'm just going to stick with the one that caught your attention, and that is my story of Carlos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't even know that I did a follow-up post, and I'll talk a little bit about how I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that whole situation was God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a little confused if I'm supposed to do anything additional, but I am listening intently.
Mm-hmm.
So the story is simple. I drove to Nashville. I had booked 3 days in Nashville to really do some business. I arrived a little bit after lunch. It was lunchtime, so I wandered outside my hotel, not having any clue where I was going. I felt compelled to walk a specific direction, and I came to what would be the entertainment district in Nashville. Came around a corner, and I got to a stoplight, or a walk path. And a gentleman came up to me and complimented me on my shoes. I knew right out of the gate it was God, because they were just Sanooks. They were not anything fancy. And so I paid attention. And my wife will tell me often that there's something about me where people tend to come up and start talking, and this was no exception. And Carlos began to ask me a few questions. He was definitely a panhandler. He acknowledges that, but he really approached me because he wanted to know who I was. So he asked me where I was from, and I said I'm from Little Rock. And he starts, no joke, you're kidding me. And he starts naming streets in Little Rock.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah. And I said, when's the last time you've been to Little Rock? Oh, it's been a while. I grew up in Pine Bluff. And I go, what is the chance of that?
Right.
That I know. And so he asked me a couple other questions, talked about the latest Razorback coach, still missed Bielema, which I was like, yeah, well, most people here don't miss Bielema. But he said, hey, would you have a meal with me? I was like, sure. And I love to buy meals. I'm not really a big believer of just giving money. So God actually knew that situation was one that I would be open to. So I said, absolutely. So I remember his response. He was elated. He was in it. Maybe it was companionship. Maybe it was the food. I'm not exactly sure. but I saw joy in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, well, where do you want to go? And I go, where do you recommend? So he named 3 places, and I said, Carlos, you just pick a place. I'll be happy to go wherever. So he picked a place. I really don't remember the name of it, but we went in, and I remember he sat his wallet and a couple other things on the table, and he said, I have to go to the bathroom. Please don't leave. I said, Carlos, I'm not going anywhere. So he came back. We had a great conversation. I mean, he is so, I couldn't get over the sports knowledge he had, the things he knew about Razorback history. He was talking about Torrey Hunter, which is a famous baseball player from Pine Bluff. I mean, I knew at that point it was legit. Everything this encounter was meant to happen.
Right.
And so we began to, or continued to share in that meal. And, a piece I didn't share in my video is that meal was actually taken care of by somebody. When she brought me the bill, she had said, somebody's got your stuff covered. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I actually did have a direct encounter at that point about what to leave for a tip. There is no doubt that the Lord told me what to do. And so after that, Carlos said, will you go listen to some music with me? And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, at some point I really do have to work, but it's fine. Sure, Carlos, we'll go. And he's like, just like 2 or 3 songs. It's like, Carlos, hey, let's just get there and take it at will. So we end up going down to this place where they did have live music. He said, okay, just 1 song. I said, just 1 song. Then I've got to go. It was a great time, good interaction. He asked for another song. I said, no, Carlos, I have to go. It's been a joy, and I've really enjoyed it. And in my mind, I walked out of there thinking, the next time I go back to Nashville, I'm going to go look up Carlos. So the story doesn't stop there. Mm-hmm. So that was on Wednesday afternoon. On Saturday, my wife and I, the kids Ethan was out, our son, and so she said, let's go have some dinner. And so we ended up going downtown. It's not something we're regularly doing, obviously, with the pandemic, but we went downtown, and we decided we were going to do a progressive dinner. And it's interesting because I can lay out the steps. I asked her for 5 more minutes because I needed to finish some things. We went by a place on the way there that was closed. All these things maneuvered. Right. So we go and we have our dinner, and we had decided that the next place we were going to go was a place across the street. So we walk across the street. This is in downtown Little Rock. And the line is long. And I go, I don't want to wait. Let's go pick someplace else. She goes, okay. So we turn around, and I notice and hear her talking to someone. And I look, and he looks at me, and he immediately goes, my angel. And I go, Carlos? And so we embraced. I know that's not COVID approved, but it was just one of those total miracles that I couldn't even explain. And in hindsight, I have struggled so much because I almost froze. I'm just sitting there running everything through my head and thinking, how is this possible?
Right.
And so he shared that he had found out his sister had passed away, and he had come home. He was en route to Pine Bluff. He needed to actually go make the bus in 45 minutes and wanted to know if there was any way I could help him out. So I don't ever carry cash, but I asked Steph. She happened to have some cash. I handed it to him, and he was just ecstatic and elated. And again, I'm still at this point really processing. I cannot figure out, I'm one of those guys that can kind of freeze. And so I really was just so overwhelmed. And part of it was my wife was with me, so I was a little bit different in my response. But as we departed, we walked down, and I said, okay, God, and I prayed with Stephanie. I said, if I am supposed to drive him to Pine Bluff, we're going to go get in the car and come back. And if he's there, I will take her home and I will obey. Because I didn't want to really have her involved. She wasn't that comfortable, but I was going to do what God wanted. So within a 5-minute span, I drove back. He was nowhere to be found. I did loop multiple times. I actually went over by the bus station. Wasn't there. But it really impacted me because it has almost refueled a passion that I have had for homeless. My son and I used to have a strong passion for homeless, and somewhere along the way, I would say my heart became a little bit more hardened. Mm-hmm. I think I can attribute to when Little Rock lightened some of their rules, and it became more of a reoccurring theme where they would come up. But it has always been a place that is deep in my heart. And this has reignited that fire. And, I was able to share the story with my entire family who, again, my son has that heart as well. And so it's really been neat to see what God has done in that. And the story, I posted online. I can't get over all the people that it's impacted in that arena. And it really has been a great what if Christ moment.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, Barbara, it's such an encouragement to talk to you, because I thought in my head, I've always remembered those stories of, you never know if that could be Christ.
That's right.
And so when I went through that process, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to treat him just as if he was our Lord. I mean, you know what I mean, as in
Right.
the response. So it was really just an incredible, undescribable scenario that when you bundle it in 3 days later and 350 miles away on a downtown night that we wouldn't normally be at, there he is at the right moment in the right place. It's really incredible.
It is incredible. That's a fantastic story. And, when I hear that and I see how God just placed all those things together, I mean, it's so encouraging. And, when I think about all the layers of it, how you were impacted, how you were able to share that with your family, how you posted it and other people were impacted. But I also think about Carlos and how Carlos had to be impacted to be treated as a person, an equal. Let's go have a meal. Let's sit and listen to some music. And then when God put him back in your path, how he sees you. And then just to think about putting him in your path, how you turn around and there's Stephanie talking to him. But when he puts you back in his path, he remembers your face. So you weren't just somebody that he stopped and got what he needed and kept going. You impacted him as well because you treated him like a human being. So when he saw you again, he was excited to see you. And that in itself says that it was more than just a chance encounter. I love that story.
And what's interesting too, Barbara, is that I really had one prayer for Carlos. And that was, and we prayed at lunch too. I asked, is it okay if we can pray? And I asked him about his family. And there's a little bit more to Carlos too, by the way. He has a criminal record and all that kind of stuff. And he was very vulnerable in sharing. But I asked about his family and he said, I'm estranged from my family. They haven't talked to me since the incident. And, I'm just really not connected. And so my prayer was that he would be reunited with his family. And I certainly wouldn't have wanted it to be because of a funeral. Right. But the truth is, I saw that as an answered prayer. And I shared that with my kids and said, doesn't always look like we think, but God was completely in that scenario. And I saw a prayer answered.
That's right. That's right. And that is fantastic, Ted. I love that. I mean, when I first saw it, it definitely impacted me. But just to hear all of those details, it's just so impactful. And I can't wait for the rest. I feel like God is still working in that. And I
agree.
Wait to hear the rest. I cannot wait to hear the rest. So is there anything else that you'd like to share? Is there anything else that you want us to know?
I would just say that I love what you're doing, Barbara. I think that, the best thing I can tell anybody watching this is look around. There are opportunities every day for us to play a part of someone's story. And just like you said, yes, Carlos is a part of my story, but the bottom line is I'm a part of his story too. And if I was in a hurry or if I was with my head down or my head up, I wouldn't have noticed Carlos. And he had shared with me, he had been on that corner for 8 hours and nobody had talked to him. So you can be the difference maker.
Oh, absolutely.
Anybody can be the difference maker.
I love that. Can I pray for you, Ted, before we leave?
Please do.
I would love it. Let me pray for us. Dear Heavenly Father, I just want to pause right now and I want to say thank you. God, I thank you for Ted. First of all, I recognize the busyness of his schedule in his life. For him to take these few minutes to share a What If Christ moment, God, I'm praying that you will bless that. God, I'm praying that everyone that sees and hears this story will just want to know more about who is Jesus.